and 314 for a shooting at Century Theaters. They're saying somebody's shooting in the auditorium.
Roger, keep your fires west of the smoke. You're cleared hot. An officer hit. Send me the world.
Don't go over that fence. Don't go over that fence. Grab the shotgun again.
Welcome to Tactical Tangents.
Welcome back to Tactical Tangents. This is Mike. This episode is brought to you by Drip Drop. Drip Drop Oral Rehydration Solution is an electrolyte powder that you mix with water that is specially formulated for quick absorption. Originally, Drip Drop was created to treat kids suffering from cholera outbreaks in parts of the world where medical treatment wasn't readily available. But it's also great if you have an active lifestyle or if you work in hot environments. You can check them out at dripdrop.com. And if you work for an agency or organization that works where it's hot or it has a lot of physical activity, have your supply guy get it for you. You can find them on GSA Advantage or through their national stock number. It's also brought to you by Dry Fire Mag. Dry Fire Mag solves the common and annoying problem of having to rack the slide every time you pull the trigger in dry fire. With the Dry Fire Mag, you can build good habits in dry fire by having a trigger that will reset itself so you can prep for the next shot without taking your other hand off the gun. You can check them out at dryfiremag.com. My guest today is Cecil Burch. Thanks for being here, Cecil.
You bet.
So Cecil runs a company called Immediate Action Combatives. They're out of Phoenix, and among other things, he's a black belt in Jiu-Jitsu and runs his school there. And Cecil, is Immediate Action Combatives also the name of your gym?
No. It's my instructor's gym. I just happen to basically be the gym manager as my side gig. So Immediate Action Combatives is, it really started as my travel gig name,
right?
And then it just sort of became, I hate using this term, my brand,
right?
But that's based on now everything, whatever I do on my own is just
under that flag.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So in addition to being a jiu-jitsu black belt, and this is kind of where we're going with the travel show that Cecil does, is he's part of the ShivWorks collective, and I'll let him talk about how that came to be and where he fits into that. He's also got a background in firearms. He's done some competition shooting and stuff from what I gather, just reading up about him online. And on the martial arts side, Cecil, you've been training in a variety of martial arts since forever, and there's some arts in there that I've never even heard of, let alone will try to pronounce. So in addition to obviously, I know you've done some boxing and some Muay Thai and the jiu-jitsu stuff, but there's a whole bunch of other stuff. You want to talk about your martial arts experience and background?
Sure. I'm such a martial art nerd. So I have really severe asthma. I've had it all my life. So I dealt with the classic bully thing, right? Something I always had to deal with. So as soon as I had the freedom to go, once I had literally the day after I got my driver's license, I went down to the local dojo in town and started training. And from there, I haven't stopped. I'm now at like 41 years of doing it. And and this is 79, 80. Ugh. It's just so painful to admit that publicly. I know it in my head, and I definitely, my body feels it, but still, I don't like admitting it. But, we didn't have YouTube, we didn't have the internet, we didn't all that. It was whatever Black Belt magazine, Inside Kung Fu, Inside Karate said were the cool things to do. And, I just started kind of figuring out how to travel and how to get some of it. So I would go to California, I would travel, and there wasn't a lot of seminars back then. Now it's like everybody takes it for granted. Seminars are easy, right? Both on the shooting side and the martial arts side. But back then it was, almost impossible. So I'd have to go to these guys' school in, South Central LA and train for a weekend. Some dumb 17-year-old kid showing up and getting beat up by all these guys thinking, oh, who's this kid? So I went through everything. I mean, I did a ton of Chinese systems. I did a lot of Chinese systems, actually. I ended up with a lot of connections to in the Chinese community. And so I did a lot of weird esoteric Chinese stuff. I did some Japanese, some Korean. I really got heavy into the Filipino martial arts, Indonesian martial arts. Whatever was the latest thing, the most deadly art on the planet. I had because I I like everything about martial arts. I like the social aspect. I love the historical, cultural thing. That's all cool. But the overall driver has to be, does this work? Right? Can I use this to protect myself or to protect my loved ones? So if somebody writes a new article saying, "Oh, this guy out of Indonesia is the deadliest man on the planet," oh, well, I gotta go train with that guy.
Let's go get some.
Yeah, I have to. And pretty early, I started jiu-jitsu in '89. Pretty early, my one instructor, my Jeet Kune Do instructor, was the first non-Brazilian, non-Gracie to start talking about jiu-jitsu. So I was really lucky for that. Even though he taught a lot of stuff incorrectly, at least I got, I at least got the preparation, and I started to see. And I fell in love early with Savate, which is a French kickboxing, like French Muay Thai.
Huh.
But it's much prettier because, of course, it's French, so it has to be prettier. But it's really good. It's a really good fighting system. The only problem is it's only for young dudes because it's a lot of hip work and stuff, and I can't do it anymore.
I want to throw out a hip, right?
Yeah. Oh man. And I never understood when I'm 23, 24 studying this, and you'd get like some big time guy come over from France, the guy, Robert Paturel, who was like the legend, right? And he actually taught the French counter-terrorist guys. We're like, okay, this is going to be so cool. He's going to come in. And you know what he teaches? Punches, elbows, and knees. And we're like, what the hell is this? But he was already he was 60 years old at the time. And we, a little thick-headed. I didn't pick that up, that maybe Savate, is not necessarily an old, it's like Muay Thai. It's not really an old man's art. So I fell in love with that early, and between the Savate and the Jiu-Jitsu, because both have the same thing. They're that combat sports thing. Whereas doesn't matter what else you do. At some point, you have to spar somebody else who now has the freedom to fight back. However, there's no grab my wrist, no the other wrist. None of that kind of stuff. It's right. Oh, I can punch or kick or do this or move around, and I can flank him and do all this. But guess what? He can do all the same stuff. And so early on, you start to, I started to pick up by the mid 90s, early to mid 90s, I started to pick up that a lot of martial arts just didn't work. It sounded good, had all the right ideas, but it fell apart when the other guy could really, truly fight back. And so that sort of ended up where I went whole hog into that combat sports world as that core thing. Oh, and then and right around then, I managed to find a guy who was actually a national level Greco-Roman wrestler. He was a Division II runner-up out of Cal State Bakersfield when he was in college, and he wanted to learn striking and he wanted to learn some submissions. And I was like, I want to learn the wrestling. So all of this is all within this couple year period, and it was like, so I made that shift in late 90s. To where I was just boxing, wrestling, and jiu-jitsu. That was what I focused on because that's what I knew worked.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, you've got your striking and your stand-up stuff and the takedowns and then the grappling on the ground. I mean, kind of the phases there. This seemed like good fundamentals. So how did you get involved in ShivWorks? And I know anyone that's been following the show for a while probably remembers that we've had Craig Douglas on the show, and that's part of his, and that's kind of, part well, I'll let you talk about the history. I don't know how it came to be and how you got involved with it, if you want to just talk about that. But we've had him on the show, and if anyone's listening and wants to hear more stuff like this, you can go find that one. And Jim, who couldn't be with us tonight, but he went to one of Craig's courses last year, and we did a kind of an after action on that. If you want to hear about ECQC, that's something you can go talk about, or that's something you can go listen about in that episode. But what's ShivWorks all about, and how'd you get involved with them?
So ShivWorks itself, just the name ShivWorks, that's Craig's company. And so I was pretty active from the get-go online, dealing with martial arts, self-defense, all that kind of stuff. I mean, I go back to the CompuServe boards and the AOL folders and all that kind of stuff, right? And so it just sort of
CompuServe, man. I have not heard that in a minute.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean,
people listening to this are going to be like, what?
Yeah, exactly. That's like, what's 8-track tape? What? Yeah. It's the same thing, but so through, you start meeting people and stuff. So I'd met Paul Sharp, probably 98, 99, maybe. And you'd look online, hey, who's doing what? Who's saying interesting things? And you have to remember back then too, is those of us who wanted to do that integration with the firearms and the hand-to-hand, we were the redheaded stepchild of, the self-defense community, right? You go to the firearms folders, boards, forums, and talk about, well, maybe you should do hand-to-hand. They'd run you off, like you're a narc at a biker rally, right? Or if you go to the martial art forums and talk about, you probably need to learn how to shoot and carry a gun. It's like, oh my God, you're speaking Satan. It's like, and so when you find those people who kind of were on that same wavelength, you start listening. Oh, this guy's pretty good. So I stumbled across. So Paul was on a forum, and I stumbled on that, and then Craig was on it. And so I started looking, he's got some good ideas. Oh, it's interesting. And I started messaging him, and we just started talking online. And he'd already known Paul. And I think they had taught together in Canada one time. And it really was, it started off just throwing ideas at each other. We were kind of the kindred spirits looking at this stuff. We had all of us had fairly similar backgrounds. All of us in the collective, what was really interesting, that a lot of us had pretty similar backgrounds, shooting and martial art wise, totally without any connections. And it was really odd. And so you just start talking, and then you're like, hey, you're throwing ideas back and forth, and then you're teaching people and he's teaching people. And, and then Larry Lindemann, same thing. He falls into it. William April falls into it. Chris Fry, all of us the same kind of thing. And we just were talking, and we were talking on the same wavelength.
Yeah.
And while all that's going on, and then we start training together, we just end up realizing that not only are we in sync with our ideas on fighting, not that we agree on everything, right? We all six of us always have our disagreements on little things here and there. Sure. But our, the framework, the principles, the underlying ideas, we're pretty in sync. And then it became, we're friends. I ended up talking more to Craig than anybody else, or Larry, or Paul, or something. And we ended up teaching at conferences together, and we realized we liked teaching together. Not as, we didn't do some giant business of, hey, let's all get together and we'll conquer the training world. It was, it was literally, we like each other. Our materials are congruent. We interact really well. Like when we all teach together, it's like a jazz band, just getting together and improvising
or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just, hey, I could riff on something and then pass it to Paul, and Paul can do something. Then Larry can do something. Then Chris can, and then Craig can do something. And it's all, there's that thread. There's that similar thread all the way through.
Yeah.
So it's just over 20 years, it's just that mix of working together and talking, and just, they're my closest friends, basically.
Well, and the reason I bring it up is because, we've, again, just having been more familiar with talking to Craig and hearing some of those ideas come out, and I start looking online and trying to learn what I can just through osmosis. And I come across the thing on their website. It's like the ShivWorks Collective, and it's these names. And you guys all have your own companies and do your own roadshow and go out and travel and teach and stuff. Yeah. But I think there's a couple themes in there that are really key here. And one is that you guys all kind of gravitated towards some of the same sports in terms of what actually works in real life. And then you're talking about the weapons-based environment stuff, where now you're incorporating, again, part of the real life equation, which is there's guns and knives and ninjas and shit. And then on top of that, you're getting shunned by these people kind of out there, and then you find these people that are speaking the same language and are kind of on the same page, which is kind of a rare thing I mean, I can only imagine back then what that must have felt like, but even now in the information age or whatever that we have, I feel like there's certain times when I go out to a training event with other cops, like law enforcement or something like that, and there's like one guy in the class that you might kind of click with. I mean, and when you're really like, okay, this guy right here gets it, like this one's what's up, and you gotta there's always going to be the group of people that are just kind of the norm or whatever. But then on this end of the spectrum, this end of the bell curve, are the innovators, the guys that are really thinking critically, and that's what pushes us forward. And it's one of the reasons I like talking to guys like you and Craig, and I haven't met or talked much with the other guys, but I hope to, because you've got this thing and it works, and these ideas and they work. So I think the work that you guys have done and this, just at least the extent that I've seen of it, obviously I'm not an expert in this stuff, but I'm just learning where I can, but no one else is really doing it in a way that, at least from what I've seen, that sells it. I've seen a lot of how do I say this politely? I don't want to trash talk anybody, but I'm also not, again, afraid of hurting their feelings so much as I just don't know where they're coming from. But I've seen a lot of stuff that looks really neat, Oh, so here I am.
It's kind of funny because now there are people out there who aren't associated with us who are starting to do the same thing, trying to integrate hand-to-hand with weapons and trying to do it and do classes that way. And it's cool to get to this point, because it wasn't that long ago. We literally were, we were anathema to everything in the training industry. We were fighting this nonstop. It wasn't really I kind of felt the change started to turn around 2012, 2013 ish. And then by probably 2015, it was very much, instead of everybody saying, why should I do jujitsu? Why should I, shoot from attention that way? Why do I care about this? Now those tend to be a little bit more the minority, maybe a big minority, but still a minority. Like most people, even if they're not our fans, like even if they're not going to train with us, they at least go, yeah, there's some validity to that.
Right.
It's cool to, after all this time to kind of feel that. It's a little, it's a little gratifying, because I felt sometimes like literally there was a concrete wall, and I just kept boom, boom,
banging your head against it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, even if they have a different take on it, at least now they're thinking about it in a way that I don't know that they otherwise were before. And again,
and the thing about that, not to interrupt, but the thing that I think people might miss is, like, us in the collective, we don't think we have all the answers, right? We don't think we've got a doctrine. We've got dogma. We've got what we think are best practices, based on 20 years of doing it, but we're not tied to that. It's going to be this way, and we have everything. I love seeing other people come out and try it. I love seeing another guy from a totally different background come and do it, because I'll look at him and go, hey, maybe I missed something. Maybe the six of us, had confirmation bias and we weren't paying attention and we missed something, and this guy will come out with that. I love that, because like you said, at least they're acknowledging that it's a problem.
Yeah.
That you can't just get by with, I'll just shoot the guy.
Yeah, which is something we've talked about a lot on the show, and we've got to get past this idea, and I'm curious where else you've seen this in your experience teaching this stuff, but the fantasies that people have in their mind about how a fight's going to go down. And I love the kind of training where, and this is one of the things I love, it's actually a good bridge into some of my questions specifically about jiu-jitsu I want to get into, because it's one of the few places where there's no theory there. It's like, well, let's try it. Like, oh, you're just going to come choke me? Like, okay, well, the 5-minute clock starts now. Yep. Let's see how that goes. It's not always how it works out. So yeah, before I pick your brain about some of those fantasies, I want to talk just about jiu-jitsu in general. It seems like you kind of gravitated there. I know we talked also about some of the boxing and Muay Thai and the wrestling stuff, but why did you kind of gravitate towards jiu-jitsu, and what are some of the, I guess, the benefits for someone that has never really taken the dive and taken the plunge into jiu-jitsu?
Like all the combat sports are great. All of them are, because they're all functional. But there's a couple things that jiu-jitsu does that's fairly unique. Like boxing's great. I love boxing. The problem is, if you're going to really train it to where you're going to get good at it, you take a lot of trauma to not just the head. Everybody goes, oh, you get punched in the head. It's not just that. It's your whole body. The two supporting ligaments on my left wrist are completely severed. That's from punching for 40 years. Sometimes and some of it was my fault. Some of it was, trying to, I'm a street fighter, so I have to fight bare knuckle. So then I have to train it that way. And I would punch things bare knuckle, and I destroyed my wrist. But, your elbows, your shoulders, your knees, your hips, judo. I love judo. But again, it's phenomenally hard on the body.
Yeah.
This is funny. My boxing coach, who was here in Phoenix, Paavo Katonen, he was an older guy from Finland, and opened a boxing gym. And I start training there, and I'm training there for a while, and I start talking to him. And Paavo's like, he knew Muay Thai. And so we start talking about Thai boxing. And we're talking more, and then he goes, oh, yeah. And I was, I can't even remember the weight category, but he was 1 year national judo champion of Finland for his weight category. And I'm like, really? So we start talking, goes, yeah, that's why I had to have both my hips replaced from all the judo.
Yeah.
And you start seeing that over and over again.
I took a couple classes of judo, and I'm like, this is, don't get me wrong, this is kind of, I'm interested in learning this, but it is not fun. I kept getting thrown onto these mats that weren't really absorbing much of the fall, and man, it was not easy on the body. That's a rough sport to do for a long time, and I don't know, maybe that's hard. My age talking, but Jesus.
Well, partly. I mean, like if you start wrestling or judo or sambo when you're a kid, it's so much easier.
Yeah,
you're way ahead of the curve. So then when you get thrown when you're 25, it's like, okay, it's no big deal. But man, when you're 35, 40, and you start doing it, and your body's already half broken down,
it hurts.
Man, judo just accelerates that.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, I love a ton of stuff about judo. I'm fascinated by judo. And it is where jiu-jitsu comes from. So, but that's just hard on the body. Whereas, so with jiu-jitsu, I'm still not sure how they stumbled on this. I've done a lot of research into judo to see where the strains are, I got a lot of early books about Kano. I've got a lot of books from the end of the 19th century, beginning of the early 20th century, talking about this stuff, trying to figure out why the Brazilians stumbled on a couple of these things. And one of them was that it's easier to beat somebody on the ground because you can control them better. You have better leverage. And so instead of spending all your time throwing somebody to the ground and striking and stuff, you just get to the ground, however, and then break the arm, choke them out, snap the knee, all those kind of things. And they stumbled on that early. And then the other thing that they did, and I think this was very much an Elio Gracie thing. I'm not 100% sure, but I think this was one of his drivers, was that your opponent is always bigger, stronger, tougher, faster, meaner, in better shape, has initiative, whatever physical attribute he has. So every technique you do has to face that, has to meet that. Which is where a lot of even the combat sports start to fall down a little bit, because there's some moves where they work really good against somebody smaller than you, maybe even your size or your peer, but they fall apart when you're facing a guy 50 pounds heavier. Well, in jiu-jitsu, then that means it's automatically an incorrect technique. Stop doing it. And that's also why, and we've never lost that. Even with the growth of the sports side of jiu-jitsu, we never lost that. So even with people doing competition centric, I mean, we're still the only combat sport that for your championship still has an open weight division, right? When's the last time you saw open weight Muay Thai tournaments, an open weight boxing tournament?
That'd be fun to watch. I mean,
it'd be fun to watch, not to be in.
Right.
Right. So, and so jiu-jitsu, kept that. That's part of the core. And then the other one, and this is the one that is probably the game changer and the one that I'm still trying to figure out where it truly came from. Did Elio just wake up one morning this way, or was there some kernel of it? This idea of, and jiu-jitsu, it's said kind of, it's a little too simplistic, but the basic idea is position before submission.
Yes.
Right? This idea that you have to have dominant positional control over another person. Then once you do, then all your stuff is easier. Your finishes are easier, which is 180 degrees from every other martial art, including every grappling submission art, where the focus is on the submission. Right? You have Japanese shoot wrestling. And it was real interesting because they both were starting to come out globally right at the same time as jiu-jitsu. And so you had these two competing strains. And the Shudo guys were much more interesting because they would have 100 different submissions. They would do what they called lock flows, where you'd have like a 14 submission chain that you'd practice on a partner. You go from a heel hook to this, to this, to this, to knee bar, to boom, boom, boom. And it was like almost all, I actually got a couple of the books that show a couple of the basic chains. And man, it makes you feel awesome. You're like, yes, I know 800 submissions. It's cool. The problem is that's where your entire focus is on the submission. So, and here comes the jiu-jitsu guys where they have like 4 submissions. The early mid 90s, you only saw rear naked choke, guillotine, armbar, maybe the Kimura, maybe. That was it. But what happened was, so the jiu-jitsu guys went to Japan and fought a lot of the shoot wrestlers. There's tons of it. You can find it online. You can find videos of it online. And guess who won every single one of those tournaments? The jiu-jitsu guys. Even though they only had, 4 or 5 submissions, and the shoot guys had 100, 150, 200.
They couldn't
because what the
execute 'em.
jiu-jitsu, they couldn't do it because they didn't think about positional control. So they jump at it, and maybe they get it, and the fight's over. But how many times do you go for a submission and it fails? Most of the time. Most of the initial attack fails. Well, in jiu-jitsu, it's like, no, I'm going to make sure I put you in a position where you can't stop me, and I will be able to do this thing. And then I can go, I will do this finish. And this is the cool thing. That directly translates to the street. That's why I always think it's so funny when people go, oh yeah, but that's, jiu-jitsu, the sports stuff. Sorry. What wins fights on the mat with rules, on the street with weapons, don't care. What wins fights, if there's any contact, what wins fights is the guy who has dominant positional control. Because then I can say, well, I'm going to choke you out. I'm going to ground and pound you into unconsciousness. I'm going to hold you here for the cops to come. Or I'm going to pull out my gun and do a mag dump of HST into you.
Yeah.
I get to pick that because I have it's not a drag race, which is what typical martial arts and defensive tactics and fighting has always been. It's a drag race to get to what you want. It's a drag race to get the gun into the fight. It's a drag race to get the knife into the fight. It's a drag race to get your spinning elbow, or your Superman punch, whatever you like, whatever your cool technique. it's a drag race to get that in the fight. Whereas jiu-jitsu completely ignores that. And it goes, we don't care.
Right. Yeah.
As long as we have that positional control, then we, and I just did this last night. You roll with, so I'm a black belt. I'm rolling with some purple belts. I can get them into a position where I literally go, what should I do here?
You've got options.
I've got options. I get to pick, and they can't do a thing about it. That at that point, now you are going to win that fight.
Right.
It's no longer like, hey, spin the roulette wheel and hopefully black comes up or hopefully green or whatever your number comes up. Right now it's, it doesn't matter. I'll spin the wheel and whatever move I decide is going to come up because I'm controlling the spin of the wheel. Well, that was a really good analogy. I literally just created that analogy. I'm gonna start using that all the time. That's a good analogy.
Steal it. You heard it here first here on Tac Tangents, right?
Exactly. But that's why jiu-jitsu works, and that's when you understand that, then now it doesn't matter if you're 25 or 56, if you're prime physical condition, or if you're a little broken down and beat up, or you're a 110-pound 16-year-old girl, or you're a 76-year-old man. It doesn't matter, because you have a decent shot at pulling this stuff off. Because it's no longer just, I hope I'm fast enough. I hope I'm strong enough. I hope I'm flexible enough to get this move in.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been one of my favorite things learning it as a lowly white belt that I am. But it's definitely chess, not checkers.
Yep.
And what I've found, there was a period of time, working nights, the class that I was going to a lot they tended to be small classes, and it was other guys that worked in corrections and stuff that also worked nights. And these guys that I just happened to end up rolling with all the time, they had 50 or more pounds on me. And it was great because I got to fight with people that were bigger than me, and I got to learn how to deal with that and get smashed, which was great, especially when I was brand new. But then I found that as I learned to manage that a little bit, I'd go roll with these really light guys that were real mobile, and the lessons still held true, but it's kind of a different problem set. And so there's a mental side of the game that is it's really, it's a lot of fun. And I don't, if for anyone listening to this that hasn't done it, I don't know how else to describe it to you, because, as soon as you start to think that, like, okay, I'm getting this part of it, there's still a whole other, it's opening another door of things you have to learn. And similarly, there's also one of our teachers at the gym that I go to, one of the owners, she's a black belt, and she's, I have a weight advantage and a strength advantage on her. And let me tell you, she works me into the ground every time I roll with her. She's like, choke, tap, 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 over and over and over. She's just kicking my ass. And it is fun to be a part of that and see that, you can come into this and be any size. Gender doesn't matter, size doesn't matter, strength doesn't even necessarily matter. There's a lot of technique to it. There's a mental side of the sport. Can you talk to that side of it, the mental aspect, the strategy, and the tactics?
Yeah, it is chess. The idea, once you get away from this thinking of as techniques, you start looking at, okay, he's here in this position, I'm here in this position. He has this control, I have this level of control. All right, what are the options? Oh, I can go this way and go this way, but if he posts out this way, then that changes this. And there's all these different things branching. And so what happens quickly, so generally the pathway in jiu-jitsu for the beginner is you just see this whole canvas, and it's just all this stuff on it, and there's nothing tying it together, and it's just so daunting. You're like, oh my God, I got to remember this move, and then there's this, and there's this.
I just got to survive for 5 to 7 minutes at a time.
Exactly. And you hope that maybe somehow one of these moves will come to you in your brain when you have the opportunity to use it. But then once you do a little while, you start to see the connections of, oh, wait, it's position. So if I have him in my close guard and I have control over one of his arms at the elbow, now I can start to do this, or this. And if he goes to defend that, I know where he's going to open himself up. He's going to open up here or here. So you already set that trap ahead of time. So either he doesn't block what you do and you get the move, bitching, or he blocks what you do, but you immediately flow into one of these other two options. And then it becomes this, this thing of like music, right? I because I'm such a failed musician, right? That was what I was. That's more than martial arts. What I wanted to be was a rock star when I was in high school. But I suck. I can't do anything. I have no musical thing. So I'm still a nerd about it. And it's like you see guys who can just start noodling around on a guitar and just produce amazing music. They're not reading from a sheet. It might not even be a song. They're just putting notes here, but they understand how notes go together. And I think when I do it in jiu-jitsu, that's as close as I can come to, an Eddie Van Halen or somebody like that. I'm creating these moves, these opportunities based on that moment, that brief moment in time. But I'm like, and my brain's already seeing these connections. And it just becomes real. When you do it the first time, you go, oh, that must have been a fluke. So you ignore it. But then it happens the second time. And now you start to get that addiction of like, oh, yes.
Success.
Victory
is mine.
Yeah. And then you want more. And then you start to see. Because, my coach always says, he goes, look, give me somebody for a week. And in 40 hours, I'll teach them every single move I know. Every single move, every physical action I know after 45 years of jiu-jitsu. He can show them. But they're still not going to be a black belt.
And in 5 minutes of rolling, you'll forget all of them.
Right, exactly. Because it's not that. It's not the moves. But it's how you put it together and understand the timing and how your brain collates all this data. And you come up with the response and when you have this response where it's perfect and you actually ask your partner, did you just let me sweep you? Did you just give me that guard pass? And he goes, no, dude, I was fighting you with 100%. But it felt like he gave it to you. Man, that's like heroin.
Yeah.
It's like, this is the best thing because it's all you. It's your teacher didn't tell you to do that. It was you created that just by the way your brain's absorbing all this information. And then what's cool is, so grappling is I'm sorry, I'll argue this all day long with anybody. Grappling's the hardest, most complex aspect of fighting, bar none. Because there are so many variables that can change in the blink of an eye. Right? Like if you and I are in a gunfight at 10 yards and I move my elbow an inch, is it really going to affect the outcome of the fight? Okay, I'm under cover and, I'm behind cover and I open up and now you shoot me in the elbow. Maybe. Or maybe I weaken or get better recoil control with okay, maybe. So a minor. But if you and I are entangled, whether standing on a feet, and I move my elbow incorrectly an inch, I'm dead. Fight is over. Done. You've just won the fight. Maybe killed me, whatever. And that can happen literally in the blink of an eye. It's rare that you have the time to analyze it like, oh, he's now shifting this way. And then, oh, his foot stepped here. It's just boom, 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 boom. And you just have to process that data on almost a subconscious level. Well, once you get used to that, once you get used to having for the neurons to be constantly firing for that 5, 6, 10-minute round, and it's doing that all the time, and then you go out and now, oh, you want me to go force on force with this guy? I'm going to clear this room and he's got a Sims gun and I just have to stand from the other side of the room and shoot him? Oh yeah, no problem. right?
Yeah.
Because the problem is much simpler and your brain is used to working much harder. That's where I think really one of the benefits of any grappling will do it, right? Any grappling, because it's so hard. I just think jiu-jitsu is that higher level because of the submissions and because of the idea of positional control. It becomes harder and more complex.
Yeah, I'm still, to be clear, I'm still very, very new, but in the first few weeks, just the first couple weeks or the first even few sessions when you start jiu-jitsu, there's the couple things that you learn, if nothing else, which I think is a big deal. And this is especially true for cops, and I'll explain why in a sec. But if you learn nothing else, it's how to deal with the feeling of I'm stuck and I don't know what the hell to do. Like I can't, I'm stuck. I can't move. I can't move. That could be not a frightening feeling, but a frustrating feeling. And especially in the context of a sport, it's good because you could start to work through that. And I think there's a mental toughness component to it. And more importantly, what builds from that is when you're rolling with someone and you're brand new and you haven't got it all figured out, and you know, I'm in trouble. This is a bad spot. I screwed up. I should not be here. And contextually, when I talk about the law enforcement side of it, is just that knowledge changes the game for me, because now if I'm thinking about like, I'm going to have to shoot this dude or something to get out of this, I'm in a bad spot. I have that knowledge and that awareness, and people that haven't ever experienced that, they're not going to know it until they get there. And I mentioned that one of our teachers, the black belt, that's, you know, not as strong, not as big as me, but still kicks my ass every single time. I learned real quick that if my arms get too far away from my body, that's going to be in some variation of an arm bar before I can even think about it. And so there's a lot of just kind of self-awareness that comes from that will shape your decision-making quite a bit, that you start to learn in the like a couple of sessions. I mean, just a couple of classes.
Yep.
And if you go for no other reason to just learn what that starts to feel like. And I think, kind of like you said, as you start to grow a little bit, it's like a drug. You're going to get addicted to it and you're going to want to keep going. But, you know, if you learn nothing else, go learn what it feels like to get in trouble, because it's eye-opening. It really is. And you start to see people that are, you know, smaller than you or not as strong as you or whatever, and they're getting you tied up in a way that you're like, I literally don't know what to do here. And that's telling.
Well, and I think that's absolutely, but the mirror image to that, I think, is just as important, is when you know you're not in a bad position, maybe you're hands-on with this dude, he's resisting arrest or whatever, you know, okay, it's not quite really bad yet, so I don't have to pull my gun. I don't have to go to that point.
Right.
You know, that's just as important as knowing, like, oh man, there's nothing else that's going to get me out of this spot. I have to go to the gun, which that's super important. But, you know, I think, I'm only going to speak for myself. I don't want to shoot anybody, you know?
Right.
You know, it's life. No matter how well it comes off, there's going to be some negative consequences. I'd rather just, if I could avoid that, even better.
Yeah.
You know?
And you're right. That is a good, the alternate view there is to know how, when you're in a situation, and say to yourself, this is manageable. I got this. You know, I'm okay. I can reach up. I can get to my radio or something if I have to, or
Exactly.
I can, if nothing else, and this is important too, and it's one of the things I want to ask you about, is if nothing else, I can take a breather and just kind of hold here for a second, come up with a plan, start to process this stuff, and then re-engage or kind of reapproach this problem another way. Can you speak to that a little bit? Energy consumption and how you kind of manage your, you know, when you explode and when you kind of just buy your time?
So, I tell people this, and I think they think I'm a liar, I'm exaggerating, and I'm not. I literally was the worst person that ever stepped on a jiu-jitsu mat ever in the history of jiu-jitsu. I just was awful. I had no physical advantages on my side. I've got asthma. I have to deal with that. Nothing in jiu-jitsu came natural to me. And when I started with my instructor back late 93, early 94-ish, he was really the only black belt outside of like LA, Florida, or New York who was teaching, who was legit. And this is the, very early UFC, first one or two UFCs. It was the Shark Tank. I mean, it was hell on earth training for those 2 hours. There were days I sat outside because we started at a Boys and Girls Club. They gave us a back room. And fortunately, the front of where the parking lot was with the Boys and Girls Club, there were no windows. And there were times I sat in my car not wanting to go in because I'm like, this is just going to be the worst.
About this.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, why am I voluntarily doing this? But the first moment where I thought maybe I can do jiu-jitsu was, I was a couple years in, and it was like two brothers that came from Chicago or Detroit, somewhere. And they were both huge. They were both like 300 pounds. And they were like, they were offensive linemen for a junior college or something like that. Not a lot of grappling skill, but they're visiting and they want to learn jiu-jitsu. So they're going. So we're rolling. And I get stuck with one of them. And I'm like, oh my God. And of course, he throws me down and he's on top of me. And he's crushing me. And it's just, it's awful. I can't breathe. And, he's trying to smash my face and grab my arm and, put all his weight on my chest and my throat. And then about the minute mark, all of a sudden, I realize the pressure's lightening up. And he's not moving as much. And I listen, and now I hear this. And I'm like, oh, well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
He literally he's out of battery. I survived that minute. He's out of battery, and I went to town. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. So then I ended up going with his brother the next round. Saying, they were like not twins, but they were damn close to twins, right? Another 300-pound guy. Same thing. Throws me down. He's on top, crushing me. And I'm in the middle of it. I'm going, oh, this sucks. I'm not enjoying this. This is not my idea of fun. But you know what? It's not completely awful. And I wait, and sure enough, in a few seconds, and I get him, and I'm like, oh. Because my instructor, yeah, exactly. And my instructor always said, your first obligation in jiu-jitsu is to be safe, right? Is safe in the sense of don't do anything that puts yourself in a deeper hole. Don't be in a hurry to get to the next step. Be safe. Watch yourself. And I'm like, oh, that's it. That's part of that of that position before submission thought process is don't expose yourself. Don't, like you said, don't reach out. Don't give that extension of your arm. Don't give your neck. Don't turn your back. Don't do those dumb things. Keep safe. And you go, oh, even when the guy's on top, even he's got knee on belly, even he's mounted, you can go, okay, all right. It's not pleasant, but I got a couple seconds. I can grab a quick breath. And then you collect your thoughts. Okay, now what do I do? Oh, well, I should do this. I'll post out and block his hips. Then I'll oopa and and that step happens. And now maybe I explode. Because I've given myself a couple seconds to go, what next? And most other, and I love wrestling, like I said, I love judo, but all other grappling systems, it's like if you have like an RPM gauge, every other grappling is this for the entire round. Whereas jiu-jitsu is and constantly. And once you start to figure out those moments when you can catch your breath, or even better, you should catch your breath, right? I tell this story, this is why I'm a really bad instructor when it comes to self-promotion. All my stories that I tell in seminars on podcasts, all my war stories are about me losing and being humiliated and sucking, right? So I was competing. It was the finals of the Pan Ams one year. And it's a guy I fought 3 other times, and he beat me all 3 other times. And I get his back. He had taken me down, so he's up 2 points, but I get his back. And I see the judge hold up the 4 fingers. I'm like, 4 points. I'm like, yeah, I'm so awesome. Right? While I'm patting myself on the back, Kelly is fighting and he manages to turn a little bit. He ends up passing my guard to side control and he beats me 5-4 because I was too busy thinking about other stuff. I wasn't like, all right, I got the hooks. I got back control. You know what? Just secure it, stabilize, be smart. Then worry about what comes after. Wait to congratulate yourself till the ref raises your hand. Right? Once you learn that component of when you can, go nitrous and when you can kind of go a little more idle, when you have to be, 45 miles an hour, that, and you're just constantly making that shift. That again, and that feeds into that ability to mentally select the right action at the right moment. Because you now have time. You're collating this data and you can go, oh, you know what I need to do? I better explode. When you hit the nitrous button and now you get the choke or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's that constant component of that, of going from, all out to idle to medium and at all times. And it's again, and I don't think you get it anyplace else. You certainly, here's the other advantage of jiu-jitsu is you could, all right, you have a good 2-hour workout. It's hard. You go home, you're sore, you're beat up. But you know what? You can go to work the next day. You could probably train the next day. Do ECQC. Do 2 hours of ECQC evolutions. You ain't doing much the next day.
Taking Motrin and icing.
Yeah, exactly. You do full on. I mean, there's a reason that even like UFC fighters and boxers and Thai boxers, they have a very limited fight camp, right? Because you can't fight at that level nonstop every day of your life.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't do it. Your body's going to collapse. But in jiu-jitsu, you can hit almost to that all out level all the time, and you're not killing yourself. So not only are you able to keep training, what that does is it allows all this complex stuff. It allows you time to process information and to absorb this and to learn the new techniques and to work the new techniques. Because you're not, oh yeah, I had, you see this. Yeah, I went to class, I hit 3 days this week and then 3 days the next week. And then I was really sore and tired and I missed a month of classes. Yeah, you know what happens when you go back after that month of class? You're almost back to zero.
To recondition yourself all over.
Yeah, it's really hard. But if you just keep that, that's why I tell people jiu-jitsu, the best thing you can do is consistency. Even if you only go once a week, just go once a week, every week, no matter what. That consistency, you keep your hand on, it's like dry fire with a gun, right? Really, where dry fire works the best is if you can get a couple minutes in almost every day. That's where you're going. Not a marathon 2-hour dry fire session, and then you never dry fire for 6 months.
Right.
You're not going to learn any of that. But if you keep that recency and that consistency in that training, all of a sudden things start clicking when you don't expect it. Right? I think that's part of the drug in jiu-jitsu is I always say everything is a peak, a valley, or a plateau in jiu-jitsu. And the problem is you don't get to pick where you are on that line at any time. So you might be on a valley or a plateau. You're on a plateau, and all of a sudden you pull off a sweep you've never done before, and it was effortless. And you go, "Oh yeah, this is why I suffer the valley and the plateaus when I hit the peaks, because my growth in my learning and my ability is just is so far above." And you keep that because now you don't go back to the same plateau. You're plateaued at that higher level, but you have to do it. You have to keep. Now, sorry, I started going off on a tangent on that kind of thing, but I think it's important as a key to why jiu-jitsu, why it works.
Yeah, no, and we're we're called Tactical Tangents for a reason. It's all good. We do that. We do that here. No, but I agree. And I need to get back on the consistency train. I've been slacking a little bit. The COVID thing and having a kid has definitely crimped my style, and I'm just making excuses at this point. But
no, those are no excuses. Are when you're just like, oh, I was tired and I came home and work was on.
Yeah.
You know, when life does get in the way, life can. I mean, COVID is a thing. When your gym shuts down, you know, okay, you can roll in the garage with a couple of your buddies or do solo exercise or something, but it's not the same, you know. So you're not making excuses. Now, if 6 months from now you're still saying the same thing, now we're going to revisit this.
Yeah, no, and I expect you to hold me accountable for sure. But no, but I mean, at this point, I feel like I have to relearn everything. Not to mention the conditioning thing, like you said, but when I've been more consistent. Because what I found is with a lot of the techniques that I've learned, you know, there's like the staples where I'm like, okay, I got these down. Those are kind of my go-tos because I've kind of built a rhythm and a routine around this. But there's certain other, you know, this sweep or this submission that I want to try to go for that you're waiting for the opportunity. And, you know, you've kind of have it in the back of your mind, but you're like, man, it's not there. It's not there. I'm going to go a different direction. And sometimes you need those opportunities. And this is what I love about it is that this is the mental aspect of it, where you're constantly thinking about these things and evaluating it. And where else do you get this? I mean, especially in a place where, and I mentioned how, and this is very similar to you talking about the twins, the brothers or whatever, the big 300-pound guys, is that when I was new and I was rolling with these dudes that were bigger than me all the time, it's like I got really comfortable and accepting of getting smashed, and that teaches you something, you know. And there's a, like I said, the mental toughness and resilience component aside, but in a similar way, I learned how to just maintain that for a minute, wait for a weakness and exploit it. And there's a lot of growth that comes from, I mean, you could drill stuff 1,000 times, but until you actually get to apply it when you're rolling with somebody, and you might get it on one guy, but you're not going to get it on the next. And so it's one of those sports that it really is addicting. And this, just recording this interview is going to encourage me to get back as soon as I can. Cause that's
good. I always love it. I love if I can feed people's addiction and get more of it, you know, proselytize as much as I can on this kind of stuff. I feel good.
That's good. You've obviously spent a lot of time specializing in the entanglement weapons-based environment. So now we're talking about, you know, you mentioned getting points in sport, jiu-jitsu and competing and stuff. So now we go into, you know, now how this applies in real life. What rules change? If you're fighting in real life where maybe the guy's got a gun, maybe he's got a weapon, maybe he's going to get your gun or your knife or your weapon. How do the rules change, or what's your outlook on that?
I don't think anything changes. What I think you have to do, there's three things that you have to be concerned with. Okay. One is totally mindset. You have to grasp that the fight might include more than your jiu-jitsu, right? You have to grasp that the other guy might produce a gun, might start striking, might try to knife you. There might be multiple opponents. There are legal consequences to choking a guy out, to snapping his elbow. You can't blindly go from the mat to the real world. And here's the thing. I say that just to emphasize it. But you know what? I don't know if I've ever met anybody who has. You know, I don't know that I've ever met anybody who thinks you can directly take what you do on the mat and just blindly go and never realize, hey, yeah, a guy might have a gun. You know, just like, you know, people make fun of gamers, right? Gamer shooters, right? I have yet to meet an IDPA guy, a USPSA guy, who thinks that all they have to do to prepare themselves for self-defense is to run USPSA stages. I've never seen any of them say that. They all go, yeah, there's other thing too. But just to make sure that you set that as the stage, you're like, all right, you have to have that.
So you can't get in the fight and just tap the guy twice and expect him to let go.
Yeah, exactly. You kind of have to have that real sense, which, I think, again, I don't think people are that stupid. It's there's always that mythical thing, right? Oh yeah, well, the jiu-jitsu guy was fighting and the other guy tapped and he stopped. Bullshit. It's never, there's never been a documented, provable, verifiable account of that happening ever. But it's that great wives' tale thing, right? It's that great myth because it gives people ammunition not to do jiu-jitsu. And then they don't have to get their ego crushed, right? But most people aren't going to be stupid, right? So I think that's something you have to realize, but I think most people do. So the two things that you really have to make sure are in play if you're going to apply your jiu-jitsu for self-defense is, number one, you have to realize that your end state might not be the submission. That the best end state might not be staying entangled with this guy on the ground. You might have to go to a weapon. You might have to strike. You might have to hold him. You might need to disengage and run as fast as you possibly can away. That all of those are possibilities, that you can't just blindly do jujitsu. Right? Jiu-jitsu is a great thing. It's a great component. It's a great and important component of the overall skill set, but it is not the only component. Right? Just like a guy who only shoots. Right? You're a great shooter. You're a far better shooter than I am, and you shoot all the time, blah, 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 but you don't do anything else. Well, you know what? Realistically, there's very few that niche where the gun is the best answer is really tiny.
Yeah.
Right. It only solves a tiny, tiny sliver of problems. So, the cliche, if all you've got is a hammer, everything looks like a nail type thing.
Right.
So you've got to have, and that's the thing that we emphasize in the Shivworks Collective is that you need to be an interdisciplinary thinking tactician. You need to have you don't have to be a master. You don't have to be a grandmaster USPSA shooter and a black belt in jiu-jitsu and a golden gloves boxer and a CrossFit Games champion level fitness. You don't have to have all that, but you have to have a functional level of those things to do it. So apply your jiu-jitsu, but understand where you might need to go out of that, right? Might need something else. So I think that's more mental than anything else. The second one is physical, is hand control. Hand control is primary. Everything starts controlling the other guy's hands because hands kill. Right? If he's going to pull out a gun, he's going to do it by using his hand. Right? If he's going to pull out a knife, a screwdriver, a socket wrench, whatever, he's got to use his hands to do it. So you have to make that a primary thing. But see, here's the thing. This is where people lose this aspect of it with jiu-jitsu. That is just as true in jiu-jitsu. Hand control is number one, right? Have you ever tried to pass somebody's guard without using your hand?
No, but I'm tempted to try it. That'd be entertaining.
We do. We do it. We'll do those drills. We'll do it where we pair off where, you're in somebody's closed guard and you switch. So one round, the guy in guard, he can't use his hands. And then the next round, the guy holding guard can't use his hands. Right? So if that guy's going to pass your guard, he's got to use his hands.
Right.
If that guy's going to choke you, what's he using for the most part? If not to finish the choke, maybe he does a triangle, but most of the time he's going to set you up by using his hands somehow to get into that position. How's he going to stop you from doing your submission? Most of the time with his hands. Right? So you have to do that in jiu-jitsu as well. The problem is we get lazy. We get mentally lazy on the mat because the consequences when we screw up are, shoot, I just tapped to my buddy. Oh, well,
yeah.
Slap hands, do it again.
Right.
Even in a tournament, what's the consequences? Oh, I just lost. Right? Oh, I don't I'm not Pan Am champion. I'm not American national champion. Cool. There's always next year, or there's always a tournament next month, right? Even in the UFC, what's the consequences if you screw up? Oh, you get knocked out. Maybe you have, you get dinged up and you spend the night in the hospital, but are you going to die? No. But on the street, you cannot, I hate saying that because that sounds so, real reality-based self-defense. Ooh, on the street, it's different. But in a real self-defense situation, we can't be lazy, right? If I screw up and I ignore the hands,
you're gonna pay
and
for
you go,
it.
You get that gun out and start blasting. I'm not tapping out to that. I don't get to start the round all over again. So it's just as important in jiu-jitsu to control the hands, but we have to watch when we're rolling. And I get it, and I do it too. You had a hard day. You've worked all day. You've got 8-9 hours in. You're not feeling great. Maybe you didn't get a lot of sleep the night before. You got to be up early the next morning, go to work, another hard day. And you go to the gym and you start rolling and you're just like, oh, whatever, You're not being 100%. Okay, I get that. That happens. But we can't let that become the habit, right? The habit is you've got to control the hands. Everything in jiu-jitsu, you have to control the hands. And once you realize that the consequences can be so severe, now you can play that way when you're doing it. I'm just rolling on my mat with my buddy. We're just trying. But now when I go for that triangle, that free hand of his, I'm already paying attention to. I'm already lock it up. Like my coach, the way he does the triangle, he puts the triangle on and then he immediately does an inverted arm bar on the other arm. He's been doing that since I first met him in like 1994. So I always think it's funny when people go, yeah, well, you put the triangle on, the other guy's going to pull a knife out and shoot you. Not in my gym. not if you come through my training lineage. But again, so that's the important stuff. Then once you have those two components, then there's not, then the only thing you have to be concerned with is what's the context, right? Because everything in jiu-jitsu has some application. Just some things are going to have a smaller percentage of application, right? Inverted stuff, right? Oh, this guy likes to berimbolo. He goes inverted guard. He's always rolling. You wouldn't do that in the street. Okay, yeah. I'm not going to do that if some dude, tries to rob me at an ATM. I'm not going to drop down and play inverted. But what if I'm in my car and that's when the attack happens? You know what? Inverted guard in a car is phenomenal. You end up, you drive that guy's head into the ceiling of the car and he can't do diddly squat. So it has, but I think, not to say it doesn't happen, because I got videos of people fighting in cars, right? For real, in real world, taxi drivers, Uber drivers, all that kind of stuff getting attacked. So it happens. It's just not as much as some guy swinging at you and you duck, you drive, you dump him to the ground, pass his guard, go knee on belly, slap him a couple times on the head, he rolls over and you choke him out from behind, right? That's more common. You'll have more use for that, but it doesn't mean all those other different jiu-jitsu things don't have some sliver. You just have to know when it fits and when it doesn't.
Well, I think the triangle is a perfect example of this. And I know, especially if someone's listening to this and isn't familiar with anything jiu-jitsu, but if you go and you YouTube what a triangle choke would look like, and you think about a self-defense scenario where the guy potentially has a gun or something tucked in his waistband or a knife or something like that, you could see why, if you're the guy that is trying to perform that choke, you're giving the guy easy access to stab you in the back and the side. I mean, you're in a bad spot if that guy pulls out a weapon. But that being said, there might be a situation where, I mean, it is a very effective choke otherwise. And if you're rolling around with somebody and that's what you got, I guess that's what you got. But, you know, I think it's an interesting way of looking at it where.
But here's the thing, because I've triangle choked people rolling around with Sims guns and knives, and no one's ever shot me or stabbed me. Because I pay attention to controlling, because they only have one arm.
Right.
They only have the one arm free.
Right.
As long as I don't ignore it, as long as I keep track of what that is, and I exert some control. And like I said, my coach has already taught that 20 years ago, so it's already part of me anyway. You know, but you have to think about these things when's the right time and when's it not.
Right.
Right. You know, and not every fight is a weapons fight. You know, so you have to, again, it's all context. When's the time to do these things? It's not black and white. That's what I'm trying to get at. That's what I'm trying to get at. It's not black and white with this stuff. It's complex. And unfortunately, people in the training community, the self-defense community, don't like complex. You know, I know military doesn't. I'm pretty sure law enforcement does it. They like very straightforward, simple, black and white. Do this. Yeah, it's much easier, especially when you're teaching institutionally.
Yeah, if cops had their way, it would be an if this then that for basically every scenario. And
yeah,
and I think the minute, if there's anything that you can take out of just a couple of days of jiu-jitsu, it's learning that there's no very clear option to, you know, these guys that whenever you talk about, oh, well, if they tried to do this, I would just shoot them. If they pulled out a knife, I would just shoot them. Give me a break. I mean, like I said, imagine going to your first day or two of jiu-jitsu and you get tied up or you're getting smashed and you're like, I can't breathe and I can't move. Let alone trying to shoot anybody. I mean, we did some drills with, I did some weapon retention stuff with guys on my team not too long ago. I was doing we had an hour of DT that I got to run them through. And we started talking about this idea that you would just shoot them. Well, where's your duty holster? And if the guy gets mounted on top of you, how are you going to get the gun out while you're trying to defend getting punched in the face? And it's not like you can tell me that we don't have videos of guys that are mounting cops out in the field. I mean, that happens. And even if your plan was to eventually just go shoot the guy, I mean, you've still got to solve the problem of getting the gun out of your holster. And that's easier said than done. I mean, you learn that, I think, really quick when you just do a little bit of jiu-jitsu. So I know we sound really dogmatic about like, man, jiu-jitsu is just like the greatest thing, but you know, I'm telling you, it is a foundational piece of fighting. There's a reason, obviously, that you have kind of gravitated towards it, and I think there's a reason that anyone who is seriously getting into like UFC or MMA stuff has to have some foundational knowledge. Not anyone can go in there with just a stand-up game and expect that's gonna hold up. What do you have any advice or principles on stand-up stuff, since you have background there as well? I mean, what should someone who is thinking about fighting in a weapons-based environment know about stand-up fighting?
It's actually the same thing. That's the beauty of this. Like, your standing clinch is exactly the same as if you're on the ground. You know, there's the horizontal clinch on the ground, and then there's the vertical clinch. It's identical. You have to be doing the same exact things. Again, hand control is primary. You know, this idea of, I hear this a lot, this idea of, I'll create space. You know, I'll create space, enough space to get my gun out. Cool. The problem is you're betting that you're going to get the gun out faster than the other guy, which is a crapshoot. And you're betting that you're going to make the hits you want to hit, which is a crapshoot. And you're betting that the hits are going to do what you want them to do. Right? Yeah. For every shooting where somebody puts, 2 rounds on the guy's chest plate and he goes down, there's 50 where you've shot him 10 times and he's still fighting.
Yep.
You know, Oh, so meanwhile, what's he doing while you make space to get your gun out and you hit him? What's he doing if he's not being done? If he's not, out of the fight? You saw that he had the gun. You already saw he had a gun in his waistband. And now you're dragging. You punch him a couple times with a couple rounds, but he gets his gun out and he starts punching you. All right. Let's say eventually you win and he stops, but now you've got bullets in you. I'm sorry. That's not what I consider optimal self-defense tactics. Unfortunately, that's how I boxed. That's why I have a hard time remembering stuff anymore. And why sometimes when I type, I transpose letters because I think I've got enough brain damage because I played, especially in the 80s, I played a Rocky game. Yeah, you can hit me twice, but I'm going to hit you twice really, really hard. And the problem is when the other guy can hit you harder than you hit him, bad stuff starts to happen.
The math doesn't work out that way.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't want to take a round. I don't want to leak. I don't care what the caliber. I don't care. I don't want to take a round.
Yeah.
So I tend to want positional control. Standing or on my feet doesn't matter. If I have any reason to believe that the other guy has a weapon, I need to control what he does. Again, it just comes down to dominant positional control. If I can control the position and I can get my gun out and he can't stop me and I can interfere with his ability to get his weapon out, I'm going to win that fight. Distance, movement. Here's the other thing. This is a martial art thing as well as a gun guy thing. In our head, we always picture us in these scenarios at our 100% best, right? We're always mentally, physically, emotionally switched on. We're feeling great.
You saw it coming.
You saw it coming, everything. And the other guy is a wimp and he sucks and he's not trained and, all this stuff. And the reality is, how often do you walk around at 100%?
Yeah.
A lot of times just, you sprained your ankle, unloading groceries from the car the other day. All right. So that's not crippling injury, but trying to fight now with a swollen ankle that hurts. Are you at your best? No. What if you just had, knee surgery? Or what if you had COVID and you're one of the guys who had the mild flu thing, but you still were sick for 3 days. And this is your first day out and about. Are you at 100%? No. You're going to feel like crap.
Yeah.
Right. And that's when you're jumped. I'm not going to base my ability to stay alive on a hope and a prayer.
Yeah.
I got to stack the odds in my favor. And so I know, even if I'm not at my best, even if are a good chunk of bad guys completely untrained? Sure. Absolutely. But if you're in a gunfight, you've already been selected for like some awful, right? The universe has already picked you for a bad lottery, right?
Right.
Well, what if the next part is you're facing Platt and Maddox, from the Miami shootout?
Yeah.
Those guys, the one, I can't think, was it Maddox? Whoever, the one who took a couple of silver tip rounds actually severed the artery and he was going to die. Yep. But after he took that round, he still killed 2 FBI agents.
Yep.
Right? That's the opponent. That's who I worry about. That's who I want to make sure that I can handle. That guy.
One of the really interesting perspectives that one of the cops at my agency, I think he's retired now, but he taught us some classes back in the day. I can't remember what exactly he was talking about or teaching, but one thing that he said that always stuck out to me was, a lot of these gangbanger kids, these punk ass kids that we deal with all the time, they're just shitheads or dirtbags or whatever you want to call them. When they get in the shootout with the cops, that's not their first gunfight for a lot of these guys. You know, for a lot of these dudes, yeah, they might not be trained. They might not be, you know, they might not have all the cool tactical shit that you have on your belt and all this stuff, but this is not their first gunfight that they've been in. And, you know, at the distances that we're talking, I mean, you know, you mentioned the roulette wheel thing, and it's like, you don't have to be a marksman. You know, if you're this, my agency, we just had a shooting, an officer involved shooting where shots were fired both ways by the officers and the bad guy. And it was 16 feet, 5 yards, 16 feet away was where that's where they found, you know, their math was 16 feet. So, you know, at that distance, you don't need to be a marksman. You don't need to be a USPSA, you know, shooter or any of those things. And similarly with the fighting stuff, I mean, if there's anything that a couple days of jiu-jitsu taught me, it's that that training is out there and it's accessible to people. And if they have done, you know, a day more than I have, then they've probably got an edge, and it's not like it's hard to get. I mean, even look at just like high school wrestling. These guys go and do wrestling. You think you're going to stay up on the ground or, you know, stay up on your feet when you know, like you said earlier, get distance, try to build distance and get your gun out. I mean, if that guy's coming at you and he wants to take you to the ground, he wants to hurt you, and now you've got a gun in one hand and not a lot of skills to defend it. I'm not sure that's gonna go the way that you think it's gonna go in your head, and yep. I think that's another big theme when you talk about taking the skills, not just fighting skills and shooting skills, but just interacting with real life. You've got to vet those things, you know, and not just like you're talking about being at 100%, not just what your own mentality is going to be, but also like what are the things that you actually have to think about in terms of the way this is going to go down. Because I hear a lot of people that talk about, well, at that distance, I'm just going to shove my gun in his ear and pull the trigger. And it's like, okay, like, well, let's try that out, you know? And I'm not saying that I've got all the answers to that, but I do think that we have to challenge some of our own assumptions because we're making some dangerous assumptions in a lot of cases. So,
that, you know, you hear that all the time. Exactly. And what gets left out is the other guy gets a vote in what's going on.
Yes.
Oh, I'm just going to shove my gun in his ear and pull the trigger. What's he doing?
Right.
Maybe preventing that from happening because the gun's right here. Everyone's going to know, oh, I don't want that gun there. You don't have to be some trained martial artist doing some cool disarm to know I don't want that gun going into my ear.
And it's problematic when now you've got something in your hand that you don't want to give that guy control over, right? So you're in a lot of ways now you're fighting one-handed.
Yep.
So I know that you've done a lot of this entanglement training related to weapons-based and entanglement work. What can you talk about some of the lessons or the themes that you've seen with weapon retention stuff or people getting their guns taken away or anything related to control of the gun? Or knife or whatever.
The rule is the concept is this: it doesn't matter who brings the gun to the fight. The guy with dominant positional control owns the gun. So if you introduce the gun at the wrong moment, and you don't have that positional control, you've just given it to the other guy. He now gets to use it. I got a great video that I put up a couple months ago. It was two street thugs getting into some altercation like in Brooklyn or something. One looked like he was a big fat guy, huge. And the other guy was much smaller. They start throwing hands and the big fat guy goes to grab a gun out of his waistband. Well, the other guy goes, oh, I don't want this to happen. Grabs onto the gun, is driving into the guy. The big fat guy's, you know, trying to move away. And guess where they end up? Oh, on the ground with the smaller guy on top. Guess who walks away with the gun and starts shooting? The smaller guy, not the guy who brought the gun to the fight. Because literally they were almost nose to nose when the fat guy tried to introduce the gun. And you see that happen over and over and over again. It happens in my coursework, even when I beg people not to do this and to pay attention. There's a panic moment when you think the gun's going to solve all the problems. So you have to have some kind of control. Okay. So here's the rule. This is what I teach. I'm not big on hard and fast black and white rules. I'm not big on dogma. I try to focus on principles, and underlying framework. But this is dogma. This is black and white. The only time you draw the gun is when you have the space to do it, the distance to do it, or you have some physical control over the other guy. That's it. No other time. I don't care what your reasonings are. I don't care your rationalization, your justification. You don't do it. That's it. You better have distance. And here's the thing with that. You better understand how much distance is really needed, because most people don't realize that how close is. They think it's my arm reaching out, no, because like everybody in the gun community, everybody in the defensive handgun training community, after a couple years, everybody knows of Dennis Tueller and the Tueller principle, right? Everybody knows about it. The majority of people ignored the implication. Well, if this guy can cross 7 yards in a second and a half, and my best cold draw is 1.7, what does that mean? So too close is not 7 yards for you. He better be at least 8 or 9 yards before you go for that gun, because otherwise he's going to be on top of you.
So we've discussed the 21-foot principle, or the 21-foot quote unquote rule, and we talked about, it's not a rule, it's a principle. And for anyone listening to this that's heard us talk about it, I want you to hear again, rewind the last few seconds and listen to what he said about the implications there, because that's exactly what we mean when we've talked about this, because it's all about action versus reaction. And if you think that you've got enough space to make this happen, and this guy is charging at you and doesn't want you to do whatever it is you think you're going to do, like you said earlier, the enemy gets a vote, right? So this is a big deal, because reaction time, just the decision to process and go, okay, I'm going to shoot this guy. The circumstances have changed just in the time that it's taken you to go from thought to action. Things have changed, and if that guy's coming at you, you're going to end up on the ground with one of your hands free. So I think those are really good points, and it falls back to the position before submission thing.
Yep, exactly. Because it drives me crazy, because and the tool, the doing the drill, it's people don't even actually think about it, right? Both sides know what's going to happen.
Right.
You're ready to shoot.
You're talking about best case.
Best case. And you're both waiting for the buzzer to start. Well, that's not any fight.
No.
That's not any fight, especially for a private citizen. Maybe a cop, might have a better chance at initiative. But even that, especially in this political climate, you can't just start going for the gun. Oh, he looked sideways at me.
Well, he was less than 20. He was at 19.7 feet. Therefore,
right, exactly. And so we're already screwing it up. And then the other thing is, so the Tueller, right? It's the bad guy stabbing the good guy, right? That's how you run the drill. Well, we're not even talking about that. We're just talking about the bad guy getting hands on your gun. Right? So where's his hands when he's running at you? He's not running like a T-Rex, right? He's running. He's already taken another 1, 2, 3 feet extra.
Not to mention that at the point that he makes impact, everything about your point of aim, point of impact, it's all shifting, right? It's all falling apart.
Exactly. All these little things go into how effed up that situation is. Yeah. And people go, Tueller, 21-foot rule, blah, 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 blah. And they don't think about this. And so when I tell people, look, you have to have the proper distance or position, because if you can get a slightly different position, that does help. But you have to have the space needed to get that gun out. And that space is more than you think. So I, in my live fire class that I do, the close contact handgun, and I do it in my standing clinch day on my traveling coursework, I do a drill that I came up with. It's real simple. to show people, and it doesn't take anything, and nobody's fighting. It's literally done at a leisurely pace. But people get this visceral idea of how close the other guy can get, and you literally see people's eyes go,
Oh,
wow.
shit. Yeah.
because it's not me telling them, hey, you better have some distance. They go, oh, and after they do the drill, now when I tell them to back up, if we're doing live fire from the paper target, I say, okay, get the distance you want when you're going to be at full extension. Now, instead of being at like 4 yards,
They're across
like,
the range.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Shooting from the parking lot.
Yeah, exactly. Because you have to have that kind of stuff. But if you haven't done it, which we talked, like we talked earlier, you haven't done it, you haven't put yourself to that and actually tested it, you can make these assumptions.
And this is another thing that with cops, and it sounds really trite. I actually hate repeating it, but it is true, and I think it's important in the context of this discussion. And for cops, we've heard people say, and I've been guilty of saying it, all fights are gunfights, right? And it's not that I have anything against the phrase or the saying. It's just it's easy to sound very trite, and it's easy to sound if you look at the way use of force is interpreted nowadays, that mentality would not be favorable for police training, because you're starting to get people thinking about like, well, everything is going to be life and death, and cops can't be thinking that way, and it's just a whole can of worms that just gets us in trouble, right? So, but in the context of this discussion, I think it's an important thing to touch on, because you talked about the video example of the little guy and the big guy pulls out the gun and the little guy runs off with it. And it really is true if you are a guy that's wearing the gun and decides to introduce it at the wrong time, and not having a whole lot of experience necessarily in doing the kind of coursework that you're teaching or that Craig's doing or anything like that, other than just a little bit of jujitsu and just trying to think critically about these things. This is a lesson that there's really no other way to teach than to learn how to grapple. Like I say grapple, literally grapple, but also like wrap your head around this position before submission thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I knew that term, position before submission, before I ever did any kind of jiu-jitsu at all. But it doesn't have the same meaning until you've actually had to try to sit there and go, okay, I'm going to try to do something with this guy, but first I need to shore this up a little bit, because otherwise I'm going to lose my position, and he's going to, and whatever I'm trying is going to back. It's just not going to work. It's just not going to be successful. And that is especially true if you find yourself wrestling with a dude, in a Walmart parking lot somewhere, trying to get control of him, and now suddenly, for whatever reason, you decide to introduce your gun into the equation. I mean, the gun was always in the equation, because we've seen plenty of cops, guys that pulled their gun right out of their holster. But if you're the cop and you go and you draw, like you're bringing that, you might be asking for way bigger problems than you had 2 seconds prior. So this is where I think, if nothing else, the good tactician, like you said, I'm just a stupid white belt, but it does make me think twice about the way, like if I'm going hands-on with somebody, how I approach that. Because, man, in the blink of an eye, like you said, there's a body awareness thing, there's hand awareness, there's all these things that can be running through your head. And God, the idea of pulling a gun out in some of those scenarios now is pretty scary. I mean, that can go sideways real quick. So I'm glad you brought those points up, especially the distance thing, because 21 feet, there's a reason that's a thing. And I think it's good that we talk about it in this discussion, because when we practice it, when I see cops practice it in defensive tactics training, and they talk about breaking contact and drawing their gun, they're taking like 3 steps.
Yep.
And when I just did this recently in some of our training, I asked these guys, well, what happens when that guy's, as soon as you break distance, he's coming back at you? I mean, fortunately for us, most bad guys just want to get away, and they're going to turn and run off, and then whatever.
Exactly.
But if he's intent on coming back at you, and you start backpedaling, taking a couple steps, not only are you on your ass, but now you've got your gun in your hand if you haven't let it slide across the parking lot or something like that. So, yeah, it's This is serious stuff, and I don't know of a better way to teach it than to get guys on the mat. And I think if police trainers and political leaders and whoever else really want to see changes in the way police use of force happens, and honestly to reduce it in a lot of ways, at least if you're talking about shootings, I think a lot less shootings would occur if cops got more training and more background in this stuff, and that's my honest belief.
Oh, I think so too, because I'm not going to speak from a law enforcement perspective, because my best friend's a cop. I'm not, so I'm not going to talk like that. But I know as a private citizen, I am less likely to go to extreme levels of violence because I know all the other stuff.
Right.
I'm not going to be that frightened. Oh my God, this person is, threatening me. I better kill him because that's the only way I'm going to survive. And I've seen that happen with people where they go, oh, all right. I don't necessarily have to have a gun. I don't have, maybe I can just hold on to this guy and I can do it So if a Mr. Private Citizen who's not having to deal with violence all the time can start to take that approach, certainly a good cop who's already got that good background of being used to reading people and understanding, have a better sense when things go sideways. But now you reinforce that with that in your heart of hearts, not because you got some certification, not because somebody outside said so. In your heart of hearts that if it goes hands on, you're like, that's cool. This punk, he is not nearly as tough as that 160-pound, 25-year-old purple belt who just won the Pan Am, who kicks my ass.
That's
3
been
days
kicking my
ass.
Yep. Exactly.
That's the thing.
And there's another way of looking at this, and I'm not saying take this for what it's worth. I'm not saying we should rest our hats on this by any stretch, but another way of looking at it is if that introducing the weapon is problematic, and you have that kind of outlook that, hey, if I time this poorly, he's going to get control of my gun. Well, now if you're fighting with this dude and you're worried about him pulling a gun, then there's some advantage just in your understanding of that. You have an advantage of being able to say, hey, if I'm paying attention to his hands and I can get good position and he does try to access a weapon, I can probably defeat that. Right. If you know what you're doing otherwise, I could probably defeat that in a way that's safer than having to shoot this guy. And I'm not saying, if you got to shoot him, then shoot him in the face, do whatever you got to do. But the point being, the better control that you have over that might prevent a worse outcome for yourself.
Yep.
Potentially, because he's going to go pull something and you're already going to have the drop on him, and now he's at the disadvantage. So
yep.
That's huge. Well, gosh, I know it was kind of an overarching thing about martial arts, jiu-jitsu in particular, and also the weapons-based and entanglement stuff. But first of all, I want to make sure that people can find where you're at. Immediate Action Combatives is your company, and you go on the road, you do some training and some coursework.
Yep.
You have a website. I imagine people can find you there.
iacombatives.com.
iacombatives.com. You also got a YouTube channel, which I didn't know this actually until a couple days ago. I saw you post on
I know
Facebook.
I'm not really good at self-promotion. That's not my thing.
You know what? The content speaks for itself though. And so
exactly. That's kind of how I've always approached it. I'm just going to put the stuff out there, and I'm going to trust that people eventually are going to see it and go, you know what? This guy is not a complete dumbass, and he's got some stuff that is worthwhile. And I'd rather people get to it organically like that than me go, hey, everybody, come take a look at my stuff.
I actually changed up I had this outline written for this interview that I ended up changing up a little bit after I saw some of those videos. So I encourage anyone listening to go to the YouTube channel. It's also just Immediate Action Combatives, right?
Yep.
Have that right? Yep. Cecil does some LE only courses. So if you're, I imagine probably some military courses. Mm-hmm. So if you're working for an agency or an organization that wants some training, not only dealing with the combatives, jiu-jitsu, grappling, anything of the sort, but specifically dealing with the weapons-based entanglement, clinch work type of stuff, I think that's key, and that's a something that's lacking in the training realm for most law enforcement for sure, and probably, if I had to guess, some of the military stuff as well.
Oh, for sure. I mean, there's some, some are a little bit higher than others, but yeah, it's still not great across the board.
Well, it goes back to your when everything, when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? I just shoot them. So there's a lot of that in the military, I imagine.
Well, and it's the same with cop work too. I mean, it's not like you guys have plenty of free time to sit around and train jujitsu and be on the shooting range all the time. I mean, you've got a couple other things you have to pay attention to too. So it's hard to get all this stuff in, and it's an effort to fit it in. Whether
it is
you're
an effort.
SEAL or whatever.
It is an effort, but I tell this to every. There's a class that I teach the first day of every academy class that comes through the recruits. I tell them, this is not a job that you got into for the paycheck or anything like that. You chose a job that, there's a degree of personal risk here, and with that comes a degree of personal responsibility. And so I'm not saying, hey, I would be lying to you. I'm not trying to sound like a hypocrite here. I'm stupid white belt. I've been doing this off and on for a couple of years. I'm not an expert by any stretch, but you do have to put yourself out there and get out of your comfort zone and explore this a little bit to at least see what you don't know. Just if nothing else, understand what you don't know. And it is hard to make time. I told you I got a list of excuses, and I can go on and on and on. But at the end of the day, I don't owe it to anyone but myself and my family and to the people that I work next to every day to get out and do this stuff, whether it's train jujitsu or, go work out and PT and run or get to the range and shoot. No one is saying that you have to be an expert, but you do have to wake up in the morning, look at yourself in the mirror and consider, hey, if I die today, right? If I leave this earth today, are people going to look back and say, man, that we lost a good one? He was doing the right things, and he took this shit seriously, and he worked his ass off, and he put his money where his mouth is, and no one's going to answer that but yourself. So we're all busy, we all have lives. I'm living proof of that. I'm not perfect about training as much. Me neither.
I'm not either.
But at the end of the day, it's on you, right? It's on you to do it, and so you have no one but to blame. No one to blame but yourself. So, cool. Well, is there anything else that you have for our listeners or think that they need to hear from this?
You know what? I do try to get this across because I think this is important, especially after what you just said, this idea that, you've got to kind of make that effort to train and to do this kind of stuff. And life does get in the way, and can be hard figuring this stuff out, and it can be hard finding the time to do it. So what I tell people is this: don't be obsessed with having a perfect training program. Don't be obsessed with trying to figure out, I've got to do everything right and do all this stuff. And if I'm not on the range 3 hours a week, and I'm not at jiu-jitsu 3 days a week, and I'm not at the gym lifting 3 days a week, it's all useless. So I'm going to sit on the couch and eat Twinkies. No, just do something every day. Do something, even if it's 1 minute, right? Do 1 minute of something. Do 1 minute of dry fire. Do 1 minute of crunches, right? Do 1 minute of burpees. Do 1 minute of hip escapes on the mat. Something. But just be consistent and do it every single day. And you know what? You're not going to see the benefit next week. You're not going to see the benefit next month. But in 2, 3, 4 years, all of a sudden you go, boy, that draw, that holster was really good right there. Man, I'm not making those mistakes that I used to. I'm not getting it fouled in my shirt. And just all of a sudden, all those things click. It's just those bits and pieces every day add up to something, as long as you consistently do it. So whatever it is, even if you want to focus on strength and fitness in the beginning, you want to concentrate on diet, you want to concentrate on shooting, whatever you can to make yourself a more capable person, a more dangerous person to bad guys, I'm all for it. I'm all for it. But just try to do something a minute a day, 2 minutes, whatever you can afford, and then, okay, hey, on Saturday, I can do a 2-hour workout. Cool. And then Sunday, you got to go back to doing a minute. Okay, cool. But at least every day you're doing something.
Yeah. Yeah. Building a habit is a big deal. And that's, something is better than nothing is a big part of my outlook on the world. If I can't get the workout regimen that I want, then damn it, I'm going to go 20-minute run, 10 minutes out, 10 minutes back. Something's better than nothing. And
Absolutely.
What I would say in the context of this conversation is you can go take an hour or a 2-hour class, probably 2 or 3 of those at probably any jiu-jitsu gym anywhere near you. Those first couple classes, they'll let you go try it out for free. It doesn't cost you anything. It's an hour or 2 of your time. Just go a couple times, if for no other reason, to get out of your comfort zone a little bit and to learn a little bit about how much you don't know. You're not going to learn everything. You're not going to come out of there a better fighter necessarily, but you will at least have an appreciation for how much out there that you don't know. So, and whether it's jiu-jitsu or some other sport, you do you. I'm a big fan of jiu-jitsu. I think it's a good place to start, but I still think that something is better than nothing. So if you want to do something different, then by all means. Cecil, thanks for your time. I'm glad that you took the time out to sit with me. I know we went on for a little bit, but I think this is a really good primer for anyone that's thinking about taking the plunge. And obviously, if anyone listening to this is near Phoenix, they should come check you out at your gym. So the gym that you teach at or that you manage, that's called something else?
Megaton BJJ.
Okay, and that's in Phoenix still, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so they can find you.
North Central Phoenix.
They can find you in Phoenix, and I definitely want to try to make it up there someday so I can get smashed and learn a thing or two from you. So hopefully I can make the drive up one of these days. So this episode was brought to you by Mantis. Mantis is a firearms training tool that works in both live fire and dry fire. Their newest products can track your recoil management and also help refine your draw from the holster. Some of their newest stuff also works for shotguns and archery if you're into those sorts of things. You can check them out at mantisx.com for data-driven performance. And also by Ride-On Optics. Ride-On is bringing you high-quality HD glass from Japan in all of their scopes and red dot sights. They are a company focused on people and quality, and their products are backed by an unconditional lifetime warranty. If you ever have a problem with their stuff, they will replace it, not repair it, which is pretty sweet. They are veteran and law enforcement owned, and you can find them at rideonoptics.com. Don't forget that we put out new episodes on the 1st and the 15th of every month. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We are at TacTangents. You can also email us, info@tacticaltangents.com. And if you want to support the show, head over to Patreon. Give us $1 for each new episode. That's going to go back into bringing you good content. We've also got some shirts and stickers and stuff like that on our website. And that's all we got. Anything else before we go, Cecil?
No, thanks for having me on. I had a really good time. It was a fun conversation.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being here. All right, guys. Good talk.